Hello, everyone, and welcome to Intro to Python by Anish Pai. Hi, I'm Anish, and I am going to be your instructor for the duration of this course. But before we get into the technical stuff, let's start by talking about what exactly is Python. Well, Python is an interpreted, object oriented programming language with dynamic semantics. Confused? Don't worry, I promise you by the end of this course, you will know what each and every one of these terms means. But for now, in order to get an explanation, just know that Python is a back-end programming language that is mainly used for scripting purposes and can be used across multiple platforms and is unlike many programming languages out there because of its capability to do both high-end and some low-end programming. Now, let's start by talking about why Python over any other language. Well, like I said, it can be used in a wide variety of areas, and also it is one of the most in-demand languages right now. That's right. Python is used by all of the big companies, you know. This includes Netflix, Google, NASA, Dropbox, and the list goes on, guys. So what else can I say other than let's get started? Now, before we start coding, obviously, we'll have to download Python. And we can do this through a website called python.org. We already have it open. So now I know you can get Python from many different places, but I strongly recommend going to python.org because that is the only approved area to get Python, and you never know what some other websites might offer. Now, when you open python.org, you'll come up to a screen like this. If you're on a Windows laptop like me, all you do is click on Downloads, click on Python 3.9.1 or whichever latest version that's there, and it will simply download. If you are on Linux or Mac OS, go to All Releases, and here you can click on Linux, and then again click on 3.9.1 or whatever latest version there is and download it, and you can do likewise for Mac OS. Now, after you're done downloading Python, you also need to get something called an IDE. An IDE stands for an Integrated Development Environment. What is that, you ask me? Well, the thing with these programming languages are, once you download them, you can't just start coding in them right away. So, like if I was to look up Python, this is what I get. But all this does is opens up a terminal. And what is a terminal? Well, terminal is not really a place where you actually write code. Terminal is just a place where you run some code and where your code is compiled, which means this is where code would go to actually get results. But you can't actually do any of the physical writing here. So what do? You use an integrated development environment. And an integrated development environment is basically an area where you can preview your code, you can physically write your code and actually debug it properly. While for other languages like Java or HTML, you'd have to download an external IDE. Luckily, Python already comes with one. Now, later on, you might choose to use another one for reasons like cross-platform coding or better functionality. But for beginners, the one already included in Python works just fine. This IDE is called idle, and it already comes when you download Python. It might vary, it might be 64-bit or 34-bit depending on your device, but don't worry, that barely makes a difference. So when you open Python 3.7.9, you'll come up on the PowerShell or the terminal, which again cannot code on that well. But here is where you can open a new file. You can do that by doing File, a new file. And here we have our first new Python file. So let's start coding, right? Now, yes, obviously, we're not gonna start by creating crazy UI games or like calculators or anything, but I promise you, we will get there soon. But for now, let's start with something simple. Well, it's our first day at Python, right? Let's say hello to the world. So, in order to print something in Python, and when we use print in the programming world, we mean display. all you have to do is write the word, sorry, small case. Python is case sensitive, which is something to remember. And by case sensitive, we mean if you write something, it's caps lock, which is supposed to be small, Python will know and it will not compile the code. So we write print, yeah. Then you put a bracket or a parenthesis, whatever you call it, and then you would put double quotation marks, write whatever you want to write in them. So like we were saying, hello world, quotation marks, and then the print statement and the bracket. This is a full line of code that basically will print hello world in the in the terminal. Now let's break this down a bit, shall we? Let's start by talking about the initial part, print. What print does is it basically gives the program a command saying, okay, whatever comes next, display that, print it. Then we have parentheses, which shows the program that this is what you need to print, whatever is inside here you need to print. And then we have double quotation marks. These are used to signify that whatever the program is printing is a string. And by string, I don't mean what you knit with. By string, I mean any character or letter. I know you might not fully understand this, but don't worry, we're going to have a full lesson learning about data structures and characters like strings and integers. So for now, just know that this is what using these quotation marks is what allows you to put in text in your code. Now, before we run it, and I know everybody can see the run option there, you have to actually save the file because only after saving it can you send it over to Python, which will run it and send you back the results. So you would file, save as, or you can just do control as. And let's say hello world, because that is what our file mainly does. Now, you might notice why I didn't use a space and I used an underscore. Well, that's not a convention. That is a convention. In Python, you'll get to not just in Python, in any coding language out there, you'll get to know why a little later. But you should always use things like underscores or dashes and try to avoid spaces in names as much as you can because doing that means you won't be able to run them in things like terminals or won't be able to use them while you're creating databases. But again, later, for now, just know it's a convention. Now, if I was using any other IDE or like I was just writing in my notepad, I would have to save this as .py. But because this is idle and it's so well adapted to Python, it already saves it as a Python file. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now we have saved. Now you can run the code by either doing F and F5 or run. You do click on run module, and voila, we have printed hello world. And that right there is your first program. Now, for those of you who haven't been following with me, I'm sorry I didn't mention this on the start, but just take a pause right now, go download Python, do what I just did, okay, and come back. So you're back. Great job. Congratulations to all of you on writing your first Python program. And I think we're going to end our class today. And we will see you in the next intro, a session of Python. Now, before you leave, I'd just like to say before you watch the new intro session, just mess around with this a bit. Try to not use the quotation marks, try to print longer sentences, try to print numbers, characters, see what happens. Try doing things like going on the next line. And if you ever get an error, just like when you run it, you get an error, don't worry about it. Just click X, do Control Z till you don't get an error, and just go on. Because honestly, getting an error at this point is common, and even the best programmers out there do make errors before their program works perfectly. So that's all for today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.